The fishwife. What? Nothing small? And you notice how they behave? It's really baboon behavior. If you want to see how to behave, I don't believe it. Neither do I, that's a dream. I didn't think it was funny. No, I don't believe that. How extraordinary that I don't feel excited. It was one of the greatest British sitcoms of all time. A show so razor-sharp, so hilariously chaotic, that even today, decades later, fans still quote its most outrageous lines. But then, just like that, it was gone. A mere 12 episodes and poof. But what exactly were the circumstances surrounding how Fawlty Towers was taken off air? Oh please, oh tremendous. Oh, I'm so happy. Join us as we unravel the real story behind the Fawlty Towers episode that destroyed it all. Imagine checking into a hotel after a long, exhausting day expecting a warm welcome, maybe a friendly smile at reception, and at the very least some basic hospitality. Now imagine instead being greeted by an owner so rude and bizarrely hostile that you start wondering if you're part of some elaborate prank. Well, that's exactly what happened to John Cleese and the Monty Python crew back in 1970 when they stumbled upon the now infamous Gleneagles Hotel in Torquay. At the time, they were in the seaside town filming Monty Python's Flying Circus, and rather than stay in some luxurious celebrity retreat, they ended up at this seemingly ordinary hotel only to realize it was anything but ordinary. The man running the place, Donald Sinclair, wasn't just unfriendly, he was a walking disaster of a hotelier. He treated guests like an inconvenience, was suspicious of everyone, and had a knack for turning the simplest interactions into pure chaos. One of the most legendary moments, Eric Idle, one of Cleese's fellow Pythons, made the mistake of leaving his briefcase in the lobby. Most hotel staff would either ignore it or politely ask if it belonged to someone, not Sinclair. In a moment of sheer paranoia, he picked up the briefcase, marched outside, and hurled it over a wall convinced it was a bomb. You know, as one does when running a business that depends on guests. That wasn't the only incident. When Terry Gilliam, another Python member, dared to use his knife and fork in the wrong hand, Sinclair stormed over to correct him, as if improper. Utensil etiquette was a punishable offense. He also had a habit of rudely barking at guests for the smallest of reasons. Complaints about service were met with irritation, and instead of offering help, he seemed to delight in making people uncomfortable. John Cleese, who already had a keen eye for observational comedy, couldn't believe what he was witnessing. He found Sinclair's behavior so absurd and unintentionally hilarious that he started taking notes. In Cleese's mind, this wasn't just a terrible hotel owner, this was a comedy goldmine. Years later, when Cleese and his then-wife Connie Booth sat down to create Fawlty Towers, they knew exactly who their leading man should be. Thus, Basil Fawlty was born, an incompetent, short-tempered, socially inept hotel owner who somehow made his guests' lives more miserable with every passing minute. Of course, Cleese exaggerated some of Sinclair's quirks for comedic effect, but the essence of the character was all there, from Basil's sarcastic outbursts to his utter inability to handle customer service. Fawlty Towers was essentially a hilarious, fictionalized retelling of Cleese's bizarre experience at the Gleneagles Hotel. What's even funnier, Sinclair reportedly had no idea that he was the inspiration for Basil Fawlty. He passed away in 1981, never fully realizing that his disastrous approach to hospitality had accidentally helped create one of the greatest sitcoms of all time. Perhaps it's a dream. No, it's not a dream. We're stuck with it, right? Cooking, art collected in the what's he cooking? John Cleese didn't just wake up one morning and decide to create Fawlty Towers all by himself. Nope, this legendary sitcom was the result of a perfect comedic partnership with his then-wife Connie Booth. While their marriage didn't exactly have a happy ending, they divorced in 1978. Their creative spark as a writing duo remained strong, long enough to give the world one of the funniest TV shows ever made. Let's rewind a bit. After their infamous stay at the Gleneagles Hotel, Cleese and Booth couldn't shake off the idea of an impossibly rude and incompetent hotel owner. They knew they had something special. But it wasn't just about making Basil Fawlty yell at guests, though. Let's be honest. That's part of the fun. They wanted the show to be packed with razor-sharp wit, farcical misunderstandings, and characters so over the top that they felt strangely real. When Fawlty Towers finally hit BBC Two in 1975, it didn't explode into instant success. In fact, some critics were downright confused. The British press wasn't exactly showering it with praise, with one critic famously calling it a disaster. But the audience, they got it. People fell in love with Basil's never-ending rage, Sybil's shrill dominance, Polly's sanity-saving interventions, and poor Manuel's clueless but lovable antics. The brilliance of the show wasn't just in its slapstick comedy, but in the sheer absurdity of the situations. Every episode was like a pressure cooker ready to explode, whether it was Basil trying and failing to impress upper-class guests, Manuel misunderstanding instructions to chaotic effect, or Sybil threatening Basil into submission with just the sound of her voice. Here's a fun fact. The BBC almost didn't give the show a second season. It wasn't until the first 6 episodes gained traction through word of mouth and repeat airings that executives realized they had struck gold. The second series came 4 years later, in 1979, making Fawlty Towers one of the few classic sitcoms with only 12 episodes to its name. In the end, despite their off-screen divorce, Cleese and Booth worked together until the very last episode. While that marked the end of their professional collaboration, their creation lived on. Decades later, Fawlty Towers is still ranked among the greatest British comedies of all time, proving that sometimes a little creative chaos makes for TV perfection. Up there a game pie got stuck up there. Great. Well, everything back to normal. Enjoy your walk. When Fawlty Towers first hit television screens in 1975, it wasn't exactly met with thunderous applause from critics. In fact, some of them struggled to understand its unique style. One famously called it a bit of a mess, while another questioned whether the chaotic nature of the show made it funny. Imagine that, a show about chaos being criticized for its chaos. Talk about missing the point. While some critics were scratching their heads, the audience had no such confusion. They loved it, watching poor, long-suffering Basil Fawlty desperately trying to keep his hotel in order, only to have everything blow up in his face, resonated with viewers. Perhaps it was because we've all known a Basil at some point. Someone in charge who thinks they're in control but is actually a walking disaster. Or maybe it was the show's impeccable timing, with every punchline hitting like a slapstick masterpiece. And let's not forget the cast. John Cleese portrayed Basil, a whirlwind of frustration, snark, and barely contained rage. Prunella Scales, as Sybil, his sharp-witted wife, was the true authority of the hotel, not that Basil would ever admit it. Then there was Andrew Sachs, as Manuel, the well-meaning but completely clueless Spanish waiter, and Connie Booth, as Polly, the only person in the hotel with a functioning brain. Together, they transformed Fawlty Towers into comedy gold. Of course, there's another reason the show was such a hit. It didn't just rely on jokes. Beneath all the madness, it had real depth. Basil wasn't merely a cranky hotel owner. He was a man constantly at war with himself, striving to climb the social ladder while being utterly terrible at it. His outbursts were hilarious, but they also revealed his deep insecurities. He wanted to impress wealthy guests, yet his own behavior ensured they never returned. Despite airing only 12 episodes, yes, just 12, the show's impact was massive. Viewers couldn't get enough of the brilliantly written disasters that unfolded. In each episode, reruns kept it alive, and over the years, its reputation only grew. By the time the British Film Institute ranked it as the greatest British television series of all time, in 2000, it was widely accepted, and the critics who once dismissed it had long since changed their tune. Even today, almost 50 years later, Fawlty Towers is still quoted, referenced, and adored by fans old and new. It's proof that truly great comedy never fades. It only gets funnier with time. It's me, where Manuel is my friend. We are good friends. AOC. Yeah, it's very modern, very socialist. Yeah, something. Fawlty Towers is often hailed as one of the funniest TV shows ever made, but it wasn't all laughs and giggles behind the scenes. While fans adored its outrageous humor, some moments ruffled a few feathers. Okay, maybe more than a few. Of the biggest controversies revolved around the episode The Germans. You probably remember the scene. Basil Fawlty, in his usual chaotic manner, stumbles, but the perpetually confused Spanish waiter, played by Andrew Sachs's Manuel's broken English, thick accent, and slapstick clumsiness became signature comedic elements of the show. Audiences found his innocent, eager-to-please nature endearing, and his catchphrase "che," uttered whenever he misunderstood Basil's wild instructions, became legendary. I specifically asked for a CU in my written confirmation, so please make sure I have it. Okay. See. However, in later years, discussions arose about whether Manuel was simply a harmless, funny character, or if he reinforced negative stereotypes about immigrants and language barriers. The debate intensified as conversations about outdated TV content gained traction in an era where streaming services carefully curate their libraries. Some Fawlty Towers episodes, including The Germans, were either removed or edited to remove certain lines. This sparked a new controversy. Fans argued that classic comedies should be viewed in the context of their time, while critics felt that some jokes simply hadn't aged well. Even John Cleese himself expressed concern about the censorship, defending the show's satire as a way of mocking ignorance, not promoting it. Yet, despite the controversies, Fawlty Towers remains a comedy treasure, with fans around the world still quoting Basil's rants, Sybil's shrieks, and Manuel's well-meaning blunders. Love it or debate it, one thing's for sure. This show knew how to push buttons while making people laugh. Fawlty Towers brought enough chaos on screen, and if you peek behind the curtain, there was plenty of drama off-screen too. The chemistry between the cast was electric, making every episode feel like a masterclass in comedic timing. But what fans didn't see was the roller coaster ride happening behind the scenes. Let's start with John Cleese and Connie Booth. You know them as the show's creative masterminds. Cleese playing the permanently frazzled Basil, and Booth as the ever-capable Polly. However, by the time the second season rolled around, Their marriage had already ended. Imagine working closely with your ex while pretending everything is fine. Awkward, right? Yet they managed to pull it off. Not just professionally, but spectacularly. There was no bitter feud or drama on set, at least not from them. They were so committed to the show that they put aside their personal differences, proving that good comedy waits for no one, not even for a broken heart. Then there's Prunella Scales, aka Basil Fawlty, the woman who could strike fear into Basil with just a shrill Basil. In real life, Scales was nothing like her bossy, no-nonsense character. She was warm, funny, and deeply respected in the industry. Scales once mentioned that she based Sybil on women she had encountered in the British upper middle class, those who could run a small empire with just a clipboard and a sharp tongue. And let's be honest, she captured that essence brilliantly. Now let's talk about Andrew Sepsis, the man behind poor, long-suffering Manuel. If anyone truly suffered for his art, it was him. Playing the clueless but lovable Spanish waiter meant he had to endure a lot of physical comedy, and some of it was quite painful. In one infamous scene, Basil whacks Manuel over the head with a frying pan. While this sounds hilarious, the first take used a real pan, resulting in Saxis sustaining a bruise. After that, they wisely switched to a rubber version. That wasn't his only injury. He was also accidentally burned during a kitchen fire scene. But like a true professional, he kept going, turning Manuel into one of the most beloved and most abused sitcom characters of all time. Despite all the behind-the-scenes drama, one thing was clear: this cast was committed. They endured personal heartbreak, physical injuries, and long, grueling days on set, all in the name of comedy. The result? One of the most iconic sitcoms of all time. It just goes to show that sometimes a little chaos on screen and off is the secret ingredient to TV magic. Oh, Polly, I want to see you at reception in 1 minute, in your hat and coat. I'm sorry, I want to see you at reception in 1 minute, in your hat and coat. Will they fit you? No. One episode of Fawlty Towers nearly led to its downfall, and believe it or not, it was one of the funniest and most controversial episodes ever made. We're talking about The Germans, the infamous episode that had audiences howling with laughter, while some TV executives were sweating bullets. So, what was all the fuss about? The storyline begins with Basil Fawlty, played by the legendary John Cleese, suffering a concussion. Basil is already a walking disaster on a good day, but with a head injury, absolute mayhem ensues. When a group of German guests arrives at the hotel, he tries his best to be diplomatic, his version of diplomacy, repeatedly yelling at his staff, "Don't mention the war," before immediately mentioning it over and over again. The scene that really got people talking, and by talking, I mean angrily writing letters to the BBC woos, when Basil, in his concussed state, starts goose-stepping across the hotel lobby, mimicking Adolf Hitler. It was classic Cleese, over the top, absurd, and completely ridiculous. While many viewers found it hilarious, the BBC faced significant criticism. The backlash was immediate. Some critics labeled the episode offensive and tasteless, accusing the show of trivializing World War II. Interestingly, German audiences had a more varied response. Many saw the humor in it and appreciated the satire. However, British TV executives were concerned, leading to discussions about potentially pulling the episode from future airings, due to fears it could damage the BBC's reputation. Despite the outrage, the episode was never fully banned, and it continued to air for decades, cementing itself as one of Fawlty Towers' most iconic moments. In recent years, as attitudes towards comedy and political correctness have evolved, The Germans has come under fresh scrutiny. Some networks have temporarily pulled it from their streaming services, while others have aired edited versions, removing certain lines and scenes. John Cleese, never one to shy away from controversy, has strongly defended the episode, arguing that it was meant to poke fun at Basil's stupidity, not to glorify anything offensive. After all, Basil Fawlty is the butt of the joke in every episode. He's rude, clueless, and constantly making things worse for himself. That's what makes Fawlty Towers so brilliant. So, did the Germans really almost destroy Fawlty Towers? Not quite. In fact, the controversy only added to the show's legendary status. It proved that great comedy can walk a fine line between genius and outrage. Even decades later, the episode remains one of the most talked about moments in British television history. As for John Cleese, he's still out there defending Basil's honor, and probably still yelling, "Don't mention the war. Swim in the morning, and then in the afternoon you can drive up into the mountains and ski. Must be rather tiring." Well, one has it. Joyce. John Cleese, Basil Fawlty, the mastermind behind Basil Fawlty, didn't stop after Fawlty Towers. Far from it. He went on to co-create the legendary comedy film A Fish Called Wanda, 1988, which was a huge hit worldwide. He also became a familiar voice in animated films like Shrek 2 as King Harold and The Jungle Book, 1994, voicing Kaa the snake. Even in his 80s, Cleese refuses to slow down. In 2023, he shocked fans by announcing plans to revive Fawlty Towers, alongside his real-life daughter, Camilla Cleese. The reboot is set to be released in 2024 and promises to bring Basil into the modern era. Whether that's a brilliant idea or a risky one remains to be seen. Let's not forget Cleese's love for controversy. He's been vocal about cancel culture, the state of modern comedy, and everything in between. This very small group of people who are super sensitive, maybe they should be working on their emotions, because as my love him or loathe him, he's still as sharp-tongued as ever. Connie Booth, Polly Sherman, who played the ever-capable waitress Polly, made an unexpected career shift after Fawlty Towers. She left acting behind completely and trained to become a psychotherapist. Talk about a plot twist. Despite the show with John Cleese, who was also her husband at the time, Booth became increasingly private after their divorce. She's rarely given interviews, and in recent years, she's lived a quiet life away from the entertainment industry. No reunions, no conventions, just a peaceful existence far from Basil's hotel chaos. Prunella Scales. Basil Fawlty enjoyed a fantastic career long after Fawlty Towers ended. She appeared in films like Howard's End, 1992, and TV shows such as ASMAP and Lucia, 1985. Sadly, in recent years, Prunella has been battling vascular dementia. Her husband, actor Timothy West, has spoken openly about how her memory is fading, but her sense of humor and warmth remain intact. Even in her struggles, she's an inspiration. Andrew Sachs's Manuel, the man behind the lovable yet clueless Manuel, continued acting well into his later years. He appeared in Coronation Street and even guest starred in Doctor Who. Tragically, Sachs passed away in 2016 at the age of 86 after a battle with vascular dementia, but his legacy is undeniable. His performance as Manuel remains one of the most beloved comedy roles in British TV history. Ballard Berkeley, the Major. Remember the slightly senile yet hilarious Major Gowan? He was played by Ballard Berkeley, a veteran actor whose career dated back to the 1920s. Sadly, he passed away in 1988, but his performance in Fawlty Towers is still talked about today, especially given how some of his outdated views would never fly in modern TV. Brian Hall. Terry the Chef. Terry the Chef and Master of Fawlty Towers was played by Brian Hall, though he wasn't in every episode. He added his own brand of chaos to the show. After Fawlty Towers, Hall continued acting in TV dramas and movies, but sadly died in 2017. Gillyflower and Renee Roberts, Miss Tibbs and Miss Gatsby, the inseparable old ladies who adored Basil. Miss Tibbs, Gillyflower, and Miss Gatsby, Renee Roberts both continued acting after the show. However, Flower passed away in 2009 and Roberts in 2010. Their performances remain legendary, proving that even small roles can make a big impact. So, what's next for Fawlty Towers? With John Cleese planning a 2024 reboot, there's a mix of excitement and nervousness among fans. Can Fawlty Towers survive in today's world of political correctness and modern humor? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the original show remains untouchable, a true comedy classic that will be making audiences laugh and cringe for generations to come.